Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Jessica Droste Yagan, partner and CEO of Impact Engine. We're proud to host a public-facing event in Chicago to educate and inspire Chicagoans about impact investing for the 10th year. For those of you who don't know Impact Engine, we're a public benefit corporation with the mission to engage more investors, entrepreneurs, and advisors in a market where financial returns are linked to positive social impacts. We accomplish this through hosting events and speaking and writing ourselves about the impact investing field and what we're learning, as well as managing impact venture capital and private equity strategies for our investors. Those of you who do know us know how passionate we are about this mission and how proud we are to have played a leading role in the growth of the Chicago impact investing ecosystem over the past 10 years. This year, we've organized our virtual series by type of impact investors: governments, individuals, foundations, and private funds, each of which have their own unique opportunities as well as constraints to manage around. I want to thank the Chicago Community Trust and the MacArthur Foundation for their critical support of this series, as well as their ongoing support of the Chicago impact investing ecosystem. They'll each be sharing more about their own work in impact investing on the April 19th session on foundations as impact investors. Registration is still open for all other sessions, and we would love to see you there. Of course, today's session is about governments as impact investors, and we are so excited about the lineup of speakers that we have to share that perspective. First, you'll hear from City Treasurer Melissa Conyears-Ervin about the City of Chicago's approach, and then she will introduce you to Brad McConnell from Allies for Community Business, an investee of theirs. Then I will welcome State Treasurer Michael Frerichs, who will share the state's approach, and then introduce Bryan Echols on his team, who will give us more depth about some of the specific impact investing programs the state is pursuing. We'll plan to leave time for Q&A at the end, and we encourage you to submit questions throughout the event using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Before we jump in, I thought it'd be helpful to review how we think about the terminology in this field, which I know can sometimes be confusing. This is the Impact Investing Showcase, but we have welcomed all the speakers throughout the sessions to share what they're doing across all of these three categories on the slide, because we believe each of these tools is valuable. Socially responsible investing, or SRI, is screening investments in or out based on whether or not they align with your mission or values. A common recent example of this is divestment from carbon-heavy companies. Environmental social governance investing, or ESG, is making investments in companies based on their performance in these three factors, ESG, which are really about how you run a company. Any company in any industry can manage ESG better or worse. And it's becoming increasingly acknowledged by mainstream investors that ESG factors can be material to financial performance, and they regularly use ESG data as part of their analyses. Finally, impact investing is very intentionally investing to create a specific positive social or environmental impact. This is what Impact Engine does when we require each of our investments to measurably improve economic opportunity, environmental sustainability, or health equity. Within impact investing, we think there are 5 main ways to intentionally create impact. You can invest with more than one of these impacts in mind at a time. Impact Engine, as I mentioned, focuses on the product that the company sells so that making money and creating impact are aligned. Place is another way to invest with impact, where you intentionally focus on creating an impact in a certain place. You'll hear the city and state treasurers, not surprisingly, and their investees talking about investing in the places they serve. Investing in a way that improves the lives of certain underserved groups, like women or people of color, is another type of impact investing, and you'll hear some about that too. And finally, process and paradigm. Process is like ESG investing, in that any company in any industry can improve its environmental, social, and governance practices. To make it impact investing, the investor needs to go beyond with a hypothesis of how their money or how their actions will improve those practices. Perhaps they will be a very active manager and push the company to improve. And finally, paradigm catches the companies that we need in order to solve big, difficult social and environmental issues, but that aren't inherently directly impactful. Like perhaps a new and more accurate carbon measurement system that allows for better decision-making to reduce carbon. You're going to hear about all of these types of impact investing over the course of this series, and each can be very impactful if done well. With that background, I'm so honored to introduce our first speaker, Melissa Conyears-Ervin, Treasurer of the City of Chicago. She is a former state representative for the 10th District And before that, spent 15 years in the insurance industry as an executive for Allstate and CS Insurance Strategies. As city treasurer, she's the only citywide elected official sitting on all 4 pension boards. She is a proud Chicagoan and resident of Garfield Park. She has used her private sector and financial experience to focus on economic development in Chicago's neighborhoods by raising awareness of systemic issues that result in racial inequalities. She believes that Chicago's $9.5 billion portfolio should be leveraged to help Chicago communities grow at the same economic rate, regardless of their zip code. I'll let the treasurer tell you all of the ways she has worked to accomplish that. Welcome, Treasurer Conyears-Ervin, and thanks so much for being here today.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that wonderful introduction, Jessica. And certainly thank you to Impact Engine for everything that you do. And this is so very educational, and I look forward to this afternoon, even hearing from others. Certainly, I am honored to be a part of this showcase. As I think about the title, Impact Investing, but I like the subtitle today for the governments as impact investors. And I'm happy to share this stage with my good friend, Illinois State Treasurer, Michael Frerichs, who has been our partner for the last couple of years in our work on the Advancing Equity in Banking Commission. Now, just for a few minutes, I would like to share a little bit about our work with Advancing Equity in Banking Commission. We call it AEBC for short, because I certainly think that this is a very important commission. In June of 2020, just after the death of George Floyd and the height of our country's racial reckoning, a report from WBEZ found that between 2012 and 2018, banks loaned more in mortgages to a single majority white neighborhood on the north side than they had in all majority Black neighborhoods in Chicago combined. Now, in a way, it really wasn't a surprise, but it was shocking to see this well-known problem quantified in cold, hard data. This was also when our country was finally talking about systemic racism, and that report was a spark for Illinois State Treasurer Michael Frerichs and I to join forces to create the Advancing Equity in Banking Commission, which brought together several banking CEOs who have spent the last 2 years reflecting on the roots of systemic inequity within their institutions and the industry, and making commitments to dismantle it. Now, very soon, hopefully over the summer, we're going to be releasing our final report over these last 2 years, and we welcome those that are listening to watch out for it. The State Treasurer's Office and my office, we also work together on the Midwest Investment Diversity Initiative, which is a coalition of institutional investors dedicated to increasing racial, ethnic, and gender diversity on corporate boards of companies headquartered in Midwestern states. Very, very important work. The members of that coalition have a combined $820 billion in assets under management and advisement. Why do I mention that? Because we have the potential to make a meaningful difference in representation on corporate boards. It's wonderful to have the chance to talk about impact investing, because incorporating non-financial factors into investment decisions is something my office specifically does a matter of course as we manage our city's portfolio of $9 billion. But I thought that it might be helpful to first talk a bit about why we as a municipality even invest. The reason a city like Chicago has an investment portfolio is because we have revenues coming in. People that are paying like their taxes, fees, services, even grants, any type of funds that are received, those revenues that come in, we also have, of course, revenues going out, things that we pay for like payroll, vendors, debt services, pension payments to retirees. We hear a lot about that if you live in Chicago. Now, obviously, there's a mismatch in timing of those cash flows from when the money comes in until when the money is going out. We also issue debt that finances things like our infrastructure, water and sewer system, and our airports. So while I say we have about $9 billion in our portfolio, That is money that has to come from us from various revenue sources. And almost all of it is earmarked for an expense that we'll incur at some point in the future. Well, while we have it, that money is what we refer to as our investment portfolio or our assets under management. Now, if you've heard me speak before, you've probably heard me say that as the Chicago City Treasurer, I do not believe that it's enough for us to just earn money for taxpayers. We have to make people's lives better. So we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard and aim for higher outcomes than just the greatest possible return. That's what impact investing is all about, especially government impact investing. So if you think back to the 5P framework that Jessica just spoke about for impact investing, a lot of our work falls under the categories of place and people. We work to make an impact in communities where there is less financial opportunity and upward mobility. And we also focus on people across communities who have historically been underserved by existing markets. So really breaking into these three pillars, we can start with socially responsible investing, which entails aligning our investments with our mission. Now, my office managed about $9 billion, and our job is to generate the greatest returns we can for Chicago's taxpayers. But it's also to invest according to Chicagoans' values. In February, and hopefully you've seen this in the news recently, but just a few months ago, my office finished an 18-month process of fully divesting the city's portfolio of fossil fuel investments. I was motivated to divest because of the clear consensus in the scientific community that the time to act is now. In fact, many believe that we probably, as a society, have waited too long to move away from the reliance on fossil fuels and carbon emitting processes. But it is equally important, however, to acknowledge that moving away from fossil fuels is simply smarter investing. I have a responsibility to ensure a stable fiscal future for the city of Chicago, and the arrival of the pandemic caused one of the most turbulent times in recent memory for the oil and gas industry. Actually, in 2020, there were reports of over 100 companies declaring bankruptcy in North America. Now, 2 years later, a crisis is unfolding in Ukraine, and the oil industry is once again at the center of chaos. But I also tell people that obviously I'm proud to be the Chicago City Treasurer, but I'm even more proud to be a mother who believes that we must do everything in our power to leave behind a better, cleaner, and healthier future for our children. That means becoming thoughtful and intentional about our everyday actions, from the foods we eat to the way we build our city, and absolutely to the way that we invest. I'm so happy to announce that last month, we successfully passed an ordinance in City Council that will codify this divestment and prevent future treasurers from reinvesting in fossil fuel companies that fail to protect our planet from climate change. Now, the second pillar is environmental social governance investing, ESG. As both a fiduciary and a steward of public trust, one of our main priorities is the preservation of capital by minimizing risk. We believe that incorporating ESG factors into our investment decisions alongside traditional financial analysis creates a stronger and more stable portfolio that can withstand a wide range of market cycles and best serves the policy priorities of the city of Chicago. And certainly we are seeing that right now throughout this pandemic. These policy issues can include climate change, human rights, income inequality, long-term corporate sustainability, and so much more. I'm very proud that our office has adopted the United Nations supported principles for responsible investment, or for short, UNPRI, making Chicago the first city in the world to become a signatory. PRI is the world's leading advocacy group for responsible investing, and becoming a signatory is a big deal as we contribute to developing a more sustainable global financial system. We believe our actions as a city can help set the standard for the financial industry and other municipalities. The third pillar, investing for impact, is really central to our work. When the pandemic began, Chicago's small businesses were devastated, especially in neighborhoods on the South and West sides. We knew that we could not afford to lose those small businesses, and we had to do everything in our power to help them survive that difficult time. We made the decision to invest up to $50 million into the Chicago Small Business Resiliency Loan Fund to provide financial relief to Chicago small businesses affected by COVID-19. This money really was a lifeline, and it went for many things, including rent, payroll, and other operating expenses to small businesses that worked so hard to get their business established. And we were not about to let the pandemic take them away from their communities. We invested through an equity lens into businesses like childcare, bakeries, small business consultancies, beauty salons, and so much more. Of these loans, over 50% went to minority-owned businesses, and nearly 30% went to woman-owned businesses. Those investments helped to keep businesses afloat when they surely would have failed through no fault of their own. They kept people employed, kept vital services and products in the communities, and they helped stabilize the local economy when it badly needed any stabilization possible. So one of our partners that was instrumental in helping many small businesses survive the pandemic is Allies for Community Business, formerly known as Axio. Allies for Community Business originated $10 million in loans through the Chicago Small Business Resiliency Fund for businesses in low to moderate income areas. And today I've invited CEO Bryan McConnell, who's been with us from the beginning of certainly helping these small businesses. Bryan McConnell is here to share with you the organization's experience with investing those funds for maximum impact and the results. So Brad, at this time, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer, for the introduction, and most importantly, for everything that you do on behalf of the City of Chicago. I'm going to spend just 5 minutes giving you first brief introduction on what our organization is, Allies for Community Business, and then second, talking about the services that we provide, and then finally, talk specifically about, in more detail, the example that Madam Treasurer just suggested with the way in which impact investing really takes place in practice. And we'll use the example of the Chicago Small Business Resiliency Fund to do so. Let me start with Allies for Community Business, just for context. So our organization supports small businesses that strengthens communities. Our mission is to provide the capital, the coaching, and the connections that entrepreneurs need to grow great businesses that create jobs and wealth in their communities. We're a nonprofit that's located on Chicago's west side in East Garfield Park, right at the corner of Lake and Kedzie, at the Hatchery, which is the largest nonprofit food and beverage incubator in the country, which we also co-own. We prioritize working with Black, Hispanic, women, and low-income entrepreneurs throughout the Chicagoland area and beyond. These are the entrepreneurs that we all know have been traditionally underserved by mainline financial institutions. And just for context, in 18 and 19, we provided approximately $7 million in loans and grants and helped roughly 6,000 entrepreneurs. In 2021, we responded to the pandemic by providing over $520 million in emergency loans and grants, plus free coaching, and we served over 43,000 community businesses that were just working very hard to survive all of this. The community businesses that we served over the last 2 years created or retained an estimated 130,000 jobs, almost all of which are in the state of Illinois, although we serve both Illinois and Indiana. We think, based on all of our experience, that our work is the most consistent and efficient way to create jobs and wealth in underserved communities. One way to measure that is that roughly every $2,000 that's invested in Allies for Community Business is going to help us to help a community business in turn create or maintain a job. I'm not aware of any more efficient way to do this. So let me just speak briefly then about the service we provide. I mentioned that our mission is the capital, the coaching, and the connections that entrepreneurs need. So I'll start with the capital. It's in the form of loans and grants. The grants that we provide are in partnership with City of Chicago, State of Illinois, county, all of the entities that have monies that are seeking to distribute to small businesses. We do that really efficiently by making sure that those dollars are distributed to those entrepreneurs who typically get left behind by public programs like the Paycheck Protection Program and many, many others. The loans that we provide, though, within our capital is what we've long done, and we've been doing that for 28 years now. Our loans are different than what small business lending typically is understood to be, and we try to serve a space that traditional banks have receded from for the last several years. So our loans are between $500 and $100,000. We don't care at all about your credit score. We don't look at it even. We have no interest in the value of your personal collateral as a borrower. All we're trying to do is find entrepreneurs that have good habits, good repayment habits, and also have thoughtful businesses that have a pretty plausible story for growth. That's it. And we just try to be very quick, use technology very aggressively in order to say yes to entrepreneurs and provide them the finances they need. Whereas in most cases, they'd either get no financing at all or pay ridiculous rates from online fintech-backed, frankly, payday lenders that would charge you triple-digit interest rates. We don't do that. So that's the capital. Talk more about that in Q&A if you wish. The coaching we provide is free. It's one-on-one. We listen carefully to what entrepreneurs are trying to accomplish and then help them on their path. We also do cohort-based coaching in the form of what we call the Neighborhood Entrepreneurship Lab, which brings together all of our services to help a small group of entrepreneurs, 25 at a time, to grow. And then finally, if there's something that an entrepreneur needs that we can't provide, then we just connect them really efficiently to all the other services throughout the Chicago ecosystem to make sure that entrepreneurs get what they need. We're the program administrator for the ShiBiz Hub site, and we do that informally in a number of ways as well. So that's the summary of the services we provide. So finally, just want to talk for a minute about this very specific example of how impact investing became real. And we'll do so just talking about, as Madam Treasurer had suggested before, what we did at the beginning of the pandemic. So cast your mind back 2 years, it's March of 2020, and the governor quite rightly had to put a shutdown order in place because of the rising health issues that we all experienced. So in response, Treasurer Conyears-Ervin provided Allies for Community Business a $10 million loan so that we in turn could lend that $10 million into the Chicago Small Business Resiliency Fund. So Allies for Community Business started accepting loan applications 12 days after the governor's shutdown order, and we started funding loans 15 days after that. Specifically, partnering with the treasurer, we borrowed $10 million and used those dollars to originate 459 emergency loans. So that's about half of the overall $20 million that A4CB originated through that Chicago Small Business Resiliency Fund program. And so a lot of people at the time thought, well, sure, I mean, that's impact investing, but are people going to be able to pay that money back? Is that going to actually help those businesses grow or to just get them deeper into a hole? Well, it turns out that we have experience now. I can say definitively that experience has been quite positive, even in a situation in which we're using very streamlined and light underwriting processes and in the midst of a severe economic downturn, which obviously is now on the way to rebounding. Of the $10 million that we lent, nearly $500,000 have already been repaid in full by 22 of those borrowers, and 94% of those outstanding loans are currently repaying on time. Just 2% of the loans that we originated through that emergency program have charged off to date. So at the time of those originations, those borrowers estimated that they will create or retain a combined 674 jobs. Over 3/4 of those businesses operate on the south and west sides of Chicago. That, in my view, is what impact investing looks like in an emergency. So lots of data points and all that. I'm going to conclude with this before handing it back to Jessica. If you're interested in making true impact in the communities that need that impact most, working with partners like Madam Treasurer, like Allies for Community Business, like the people we're going to hear from soon, that's the way to do so, in my view. And we're doing it really efficiently. We're doing it very aggressively. And I think doing it very successfully because we're working with the entrepreneurs who are already in these communities who know how to best create wealth and jobs. Funding them is the way to then get more of the wealth and jobs that we all want on the south and west sides of Chicago. And with that, I'll turn it back, Jessica, to you.
Thank you so much, Brad. Thanks to you, also to Treasurer Conyears-Ervin. I think that really helped bring to life the role that the city can and does play in investing in our community. And in general, I hope it helps those watching and listening just to see again, like how impact investing works. It's one thing to have kind of a theory of change or an investment strategy that will create impact, but then you have to follow through, right? You have to kind of see where the money goes and then where the money goes and measure it and actually be able to demonstrate impact at the end of the day. And so hopefully this example was helpful in that you could see that the money in the city treasurer went to Allies for Community Business. That money went directly to small businesses. And Brad was able to share some of the impact of those loans. So with that, I'm honored to welcome our next speaker, Michael Frerichs, the treasurer of the state of Illinois. His office invests money on behalf of the state and local units of governments, actively managing approximately $50 billion. He also believes in providing individuals with financial tools so that they can invest in themselves. And his office promotes programs with that goal. I'll let him and his colleagues share the details of his office's work, of course. Treasurer Frerichs was born and raised in Illinois and has also been an entrepreneur, served as a volunteer firefighter and the state senator from East Central Illinois, among many other impressive accomplishments. Welcome, Treasurer Frerichs, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jessica, for the host pocket. Thank you, Jessica, for the warm introduction and inviting me to join today's discussion. So I'm pleased to join Treasurer Conyears-Ervin and Brad McConnell, as well as everyone in attendance joining us today. So as Jessica mentioned, my name is Michael Frerichs, and I am the treasurer for the state of Illinois. As treasurer, I'm the chief investment and banking officer for the state. My office invests money on behalf of state agencies, local units of government, individual savers, as Jessica pointed out. We currently oversee approximately $52 billion across different investment pools, including about $27 billion in state funds, around $16 billion in retirement and college savings plans, and about $9 billion on behalf of local and state governments. So as a portion of our state portfolio, my office administers several dedicated and sizable investment programs designed to spur economic development, people, and product-based impact throughout the state of Illinois. Like other fiduciaries, my job is to prudently invest public funds, but I also have a responsibility to the long-term fiscal health of our state and local government institutions, which rely on a vibrant economy. And I also have a duty to tend to the well-being of communities I represent, including the economic security of millions of workers. When people think about the role of state treasurer and traditional government investors, many are surprised when I tell them about the work we do and how we approach investment decisions. As an office, we've been laser focused on innovating and adapting our programs to meet the needs of local constituents and businesses, all while fulfilling our fiduciary duty. So for example, we heard earlier a bit about SRI and ESG and impact investing. For our office, we integrate material ESG factors across our investment processes, from the evaluation of individual issuers to the selection of fund managers. I believe that now more than ever before, we've seen how companies, communities, and their investors are impacted by the onset of unconventional factors, or what many refer to as ESG factors. So this gives us an important lesson. It tells us that when investors only examine a company's financial condition and technical indicators, they may not clearly see what the company is prepared to withstand an acute shock, like a global pandemic we've been through, or to manage systemic risk like climate change. But when investors analyze a company's long-term sustainability, such as its management of climate risks, its human capital management practices, or its commitment to diversity and inclusion, then investors can better assess wider risks. They can identify opportunities and make more informed decisions. We also recognize the value of corporate engagement and investment stewardship. where we directly engage with our portfolio companies and fund managers to push for ESG best practices and improve corporate behavior. And we've seen this approach bear fruit. Now, Treasurer Conyears-Ervin pointed out that the city of Chicago joined UNPRI. No competition, but we joined in August of 2008, right before, and we're proud to say that we were the first state treasurer's office to sign on as a signatory to PRI. Investors can have a significant impact when they leverage their seat at the table and use their rights as shareholders to improve practices at corporations and asset management firms. Treasurer Conyears-Ervin's mentioned some of the work we've done through coalitions such as the Midwest Investment Diversity Initiative. We support and actively participate in investor coalitions and groups that conduct engagements on a massive scale. For many asset owners, it's challenging and resource intensive to conduct numerous direct engagement with companies. So it's important to support organizations who collectively pull together and bring resources and voices of shareholders directly to management. So this work simultaneously advances our fiduciary duty and helps foster a business community that is more attentive to societal impacts, structural trends, and economic inclusion. There's continuously more and more evidence that shows that companies with more diversity and stronger ESG practices often have stronger financial performance. Now, when it comes to our specific investment portfolios, we make investments from pools of capital with a direct intent. We have an explicit intention to generate positive, measurable, social, and environmental impact alongside a financial return. When we look locally, we see a lack of access to capital for companies, unmet needs for capital in underserved communities, the need to lower costs to attend college, and several other areas in which government can be a true catalyst. My office has implemented various strategies that aim to create not only place-based impact, but also people and product impact to elevate our communities and constituents. I'm a firm believer that if we as a community put our backs into this, the positive impacts on people and communities across our states can be enormous. One specific area that we know is one of our greatest economic assets that we can tap into and continue to develop is our startup community. This is where our Illinois Growth and Innovation Fund comes in. The Illinois Growth and Innovation Fund, or as we call it, ILGIF, is an impact investment vehicle aiming to invest approximately $1 billion in ways that attract, assist, and retain quality tech businesses in Illinois. We make targeted investments with best-in-class venture and private equity funds that then in turn invest in these tech-enabled businesses. Our core objectives of this program are tailored to three primary objectives. Number one, to deliver strong investment performance for our constituents. Two, drive economic development throughout Illinois. And three, foster a more diverse and inclusive manager and entrepreneurial community across the state. Now, these three goals are not singular. In fact, our core philosophy is that each of these goals are collinear. We can facilitate economic impact, and we can foster a more diverse and inclusive entrepreneurial community in Illinois all at the same time and without sacrificing any returns. We have intentionally pursued manager diversity, specifically underrepresented minority and women-owned firms. Integrating diverse factors into our investment decisions is not only a way to support our communities, but we know it's smart business. Diverse firms are often better positioned for greater innovation, stronger investment returns, and better investment decision-making. And that's why we've made a concerted effort to integrate equity, diversity, and inclusion within the venture capital ecosystem. We now have over $230 million invested with diverse fund managers, which comes out to about 44% of the total committed capital to date. One of our proudest examples of how we are leveraging our capital to target specific communities includes our collaborative partnership with Don Thompson and his team at Cleveland Avenue through the Cleveland Avenue State Treasurer's Urban Success Fund, also known as Cast Us. Cast Us is an investment vehicle focused on supporting innovative, creative, and talented Black and Latinx and women entrepreneurs on the south and west sides of Chicago. People have traditionally been shut out of venture capital. Now, you'll hear from the team at Cleveland Avenue later this month during an upcoming series for the Chicago Impact Showcase. But I believe a key to growing our economy is to support local innovation and to do it equitably. While our work in the startup community has been a priority, we also understand the place and product-based impact work that serves a role in uplifting constituents. In addition to the investing in our startup ecosystem, we have 3 impact investment deposit programs through our Invest in Illinois programs. These programs provide impact investment deposits to lending institutions, to provide consumer loans, to assist with farm-related expenses, to finance business expansion, and to fund other important economic development activities. By providing access to state investment capital at a lower rate, Invest in Illinois incentivizes financial institutions to lend to groups marginalized by limited loans or high interest rates. We are particularly focused on growing and investing in underserved areas of Illinois, be they rural, suburban, or urban communities. Not only are there excellent investment opportunities in these communities, but they are also excellent opportunities to create jobs, to grow businesses, and to foster long-term economic prosperity. Recently, we sought new opportunities to further drive impact here in Illinois. While some of these newer programs are still in early development, they are being formed to not only generate financial returns, but also to support our local economy. As recent reporting has demonstrated, most banks have failed to equitably serve communities of color in Illinois. With our new authority, we will provide a loan guarantee program to encourage financial institutions to lend in communities of color and low-income communities. The guarantee we provide will offset perceived risk on the part of the financial institution while limiting the exposure of the state. As I see it, it's another win-win, providing investment returns while building our underserved communities. And lastly, another program that we are deploying with an impact lens is around infrastructure and real estate. Infrastructure is the backbone of our daily lives and communities. However, historic underinvestment in infrastructure threatens Illinois' competitive advantage and the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. Last year, we championed the Infrastructure Development Act, which authorizes my office to invest up to 5% of our state's investment portfolio, which is approximately $1 billion. We'll invest in local infrastructure development projects throughout Illinois and Illinois infrastructure development firms. This aims to invest with unique regional focus, enabling financial returns while at the same time supporting investments that grow local economies and generate additional impact in the state through improved infrastructure and high-quality jobs. The thesis being that deploying capital purposefully will enable sustainable development while also improving financial and community outcomes. In addition to some of the capital development work we do, our office does not stop there. As Treasurer Conyears-Ervin mentioned, in 2020, she and I joined together to create the Advancing Equity in Banking Commission, a network of prominent banking institutions anchored in Illinois and committed to advancing equity and eliminating systemic racism in the banking industry through equitable hiring and lending and investment in Black communities. The goal, again, is to address systemic racism within the banking industry and to address and improve gaps in lending, talent acquisition, and community investment. Now, I've talked for a while, but I only scratched the surface about the role my office plays as an impact investor. Next, I want to turn to my Deputy Director of Impact Investments, Bryan Echols, to give some more details and examples of the work we are doing. So Bryan, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Treasurer Frerichs, Madam Treasurer, Brad, Jessica, thank you for having us today. Kind of carrying on where the picking up where the treasurer left off, in June of 2020, well, actually stepping back in February of 2020, both treasurer's offices attended a meeting that was held and called to order by John Hope Bryan of Operation Hope, along with Congressman Foster and some banking CEOs. And the topic was, how do we create opportunities in low to moderate income communities? What role does the banking community play in how we address systemic racism? Fast forward, a month after that, as you all know, March 13th, 2020, many of us got the word that we would be working from home because of the pandemic. Moving forward to June, there was civil unrest. George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and what we saw were global movements around systemic racism. And then there was a WBEZ story called Where Banks Don't Lend that really brought to light the inequities in investing, traditional inequities, redlining. And Madam Treasurer reached out to the city, to our treasurer, to Treasurer Frerichs, to talk about how can we convene the banks to talk about how we address systemic racism. So very quickly, we pulled together some of the biggest players in Chicago and the state of Illinois in the banking industry. And what we heard from the CEOs was, there's a lot that they were doing, but they knew that there was so much more that they could do. So we identified 3 key areas: talent acquisition. We talked about investments, lending. And in the lending portion, we specifically looked at mortgage lending, and we looked at small business lending, because we recognized that there was a huge deficiency in how those resources reached communities of color. And then finally, we talked about community investment. And basically that was how the banks use their resources to make impact in communities. And one of the ways that we have found out through their CRA commitments is they invest in entities like Allies for Community Business and other CDFIs and MDIs throughout the state. And because of that, one of the reasons that they do that is because they recognize that the CDFIs and MDIs have a more of a connection to communities. They're usually right inside of communities, and they create spaces for communities to come in and learn and bring their ideas. And because of that, some of the banks have created communal spaces for business owners and various trainings. And if you think back to November and October of 2020, based on what we were doing through the Advancing Equity in Banking Commission, many of the larger banks did these public rollouts. And what they said was, we are investing millions of dollars in low to moderate income communities to address systemic racism. We have been convening those banks since 2020. This year, Juneteenth, we will roll out a report based on our findings and suggestions to some of the banks. So we're hoping that many of you will be able to attend that event. And you heard Treasurer Frerichs talk about what our approach is. And when we think about the 5P framework, we invest in people, place, and programs. And to some degree, all of that leads to a paradigm shift. We serve the people of Illinois. There are 6 major metropolitan areas that are very diverse. And in each of those metropolitan areas, we recognize that there are people who lack investment. So our goal is through the many programs that the treasurer spoke about, how we get these programs is we listen to what the community needs. And as governmental entities, sometimes we'll be the first to step out in hopes that the private sector and philanthropy and corporations and individuals even will step out with us and add to the investments. And when we think about place, we recognize that resources flow differently in different parts of the state. So what we attempt to do is to leverage our resources to bring equity in how we invest and how we make improvements, right, for individuals and their quality of life. And when we invest in diverse asset managers, as the treasurer spoke about, some $230 million has gone to diverse asset managers. Before this current administration under Treasurer Frerichs, that wasn't the case. So as an individual who is not only the Deputy Director of Impact Investments, but I'm also a social justice practitioner, it is very appealing when a person works for a treasurer that has the courage to think outside the box and to create space for those of us who work for him to create different programs. So one of the other programs that we recently were empowered to do, and this came about through the Illinois Black Caucus's financial pillar. We were given the power to create something called a community development loan guarantee pool. And what it is basically $50 million that we are going to be able to allocate to what we call either, a host institution or a trustee in some other spaces. And basically what it does is it provides a streamlined option for administering the program, and it allows the treasurer to establish one or more accounts with single financial institutions. And it also provides us flexibility in how we administer the program, and with the options of using an approved financial institutions to hold multiple loan guarantee accounts. The option allows us non-depository institutions such as CDFIs to participate. And one of the reasons, again, that we partner with CDFIs and MDIs is because, again, they are deeply rooted in communities. The way that we build these programs is we work specifically with CDFIs. Through our work, we have met with multiple CDFIs, Allies for Community Business, as well as CCLF, different firms, because as you all know, CDFIs and MDIs are all very different in how they show up and who they serve. So in order for us as the state to create the best program, we engage with the individuals who we want to make these investments in, to basically hear about, like, what are rates, what rates are appealing, what terms are appealing, how do they administer their different loans, so that we can have a solid handoff when we have the resources to put them in the hands of the end users. So one of the other things is that I want to talk about with the loan guarantee program is it protects state funds from abuse and mismanagement by explicitly stating that the treasurer's rights to withdraw funds if program requirements are not met. So we are very conscious about how we connect with different financial institutions. We basically want to limit our exposure. The structure of the program limits the state's funds exposed in the event of loan defaults. The borrowers and the lenders and the state treasurer will both make deposits into the guarantee account. The funds in the account can be used to cover losses of any guaranteed loan, but only up to a full amount in the account. Any excess losses will be borne to the institution. What we want to do is stimulate investment in communities. And one of the ways that we have also done this is we're very intentional in how we connect with other states that have done similar programs. We've connected with Michigan, and we are currently, will be in conversations with the California State Treasurer to talk about how they structure the program. Capital access programs like this have been shown to be, again, very effective at how we channel loans to underserved populations. 88% of participants, for example, in Michigan's program were considered to be not considered to be bankable. And what we want to do is expand the individuals who can be banked. And, you know, in closing, one of the things that I want to suggest to this space is when we create these different programs and initiatives to impact people and places, I want, you know, think of sustainability and understand that when we are looking to serve communities that have been marginalized and left behind, sustainability is key. It's important that as the end user, we think beyond a grant cycle, and we think beyond the return on the investment. How do we create support for these individuals that we want to serve with our investments? Secondly, I think about capacity building. How do we, as professionals, help individuals to get their capacity and not create programs that that don't allow them to do what they do best? And then finally, how do we respect the wisdom in the room? And that goes back to what we were saying and how we connect with the end user. So for example, again, the loan guarantee program is going to go into CDFIs and MDIs. We didn't create the program on our own on the front end. We have wanted to walk with CDFIs and MDIs along the way and get their input so that if and when the program is launched, it's a smooth transition because we know exactly what was needed. So with that, I turn it back over to Jessica.
Thank you, Bryan. And thanks so much to Treasurer Frerichs as well. Really helped bring to life a few more examples for everyone. We are going to quickly start losing people because we're running into the end of the hour, but I would like to pick up on a couple of questions that came in. So we got some great questions in from the audience, and I'm going to pick up on a theme in the questions and ask each of you to kind of give a very brief, like 1 minute answer if you're able. And that is, we got a number of questions related to action. What can citizens do to let their governments know what, you know, how they would like to use their investment dollars? How can people get involved with Allies for Community Business? What can banks do to work against redlining, et cetera? So you don't have to, don't touch on all those topics, but if each of you could take 1 minute, and I'll start with Treasurer Conyears-Ervin, and just say, you know, here's how I would suggest that watchers and listeners today could take action based on some of the stuff you've shared.
I think that is a great question. And I love to be a part of panels when the participants ask, how can I help? Right? Because as elected officials, all the time, many of times, things are just kind of placed at our doorstep and say, you figure it out. So really good question. I would say for the divestment ordinance specifically, we really had the help and partnership of 350.org. And so I say that organization because that is an example of how you as a resident can be a part of community organizations that are making a difference. And I'll tell you, they are like going around from city to city throughout the country, I would say, really trying to make a difference. There are many organizations that are working to make a difference. So I would say be a part of an organization. That's the start.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Brad next. We'll go in order of speakers.
A4cb.org. A4cb.org is our site. And on our site, we try to offer a number of different things inclusive of, one, if you're interested in providing your skills to small business owners, we have a page on our site, which is a place where you can volunteer to provide business coaching, either one-off or in a systematic manner. 2, if you want to invest either in the form of providing a grant or providing a loan to us so that we in turn can provide more grants and loans to small business owners, there's a big button that allows you to do that. And 3rd and finally, any entrepreneurs in the communities that you care about, that you live in, that you work in, that you invest in, who you think might value our services, send them to A4CB, a4cb.org, because it's pretty obvious at the top of the site how to either seek free coaching, apply for a loan, or anything else you're seeking to accomplish.
Thank you so much. Treasurer Frerichs.
Yeah, I'll be quick because I'll echo what Treasurer Conyears-Ervin said. Be part of an organization. We have lots of good ideas in our office. We have things that we're in the midst of implementing. We frequently do this in collaboration, many of our efforts with organizations out there. But don't be afraid to let your elected officials know where you stand. Feel free to reach out. Let us know your names, where you're from, so we can be in touch with you. We feel pretty strongly about the work we're doing, providing long-term value for these companies. But it's also really nice to know that others agree. And when they disagree, we like hearing that too, because we learn from that interaction.
Thank you. And Bryan.
So finally, I would say that, because our elected officials are there because you elected them, you have the power, and each of them, as you've heard from both of the treasurers, they want to hear from you. And quite frankly, your ideas, all of our programs come out of the need of the community. You could go on our website and look at every program that we have, and it's because there are individuals who stepped up and said, this is what we need. So your voices are valued and welcomed in our space. So please reach out to your elected officials. Either one of us would be willing to hear what you have to say and work in partnership with you.
And I neglected, thank you for that, Bryan. I neglected to mention our website, chicagocitytreasurer.com.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you. You're all such busy people doing important work. Really appreciate the time you took over the past hour to share what you're doing. And I learned a lot too that I didn't even know was happening in the city and state treasury. And I think just what we want to bring to life here is investment can be a both and, a win-win, right? And this is true for governments as well as all the other types of impact investors you'll hear from throughout the rest of the month. And we're going to pull up a slide just showing you the rest of the sessions. In case you want to register, they're still open. We have individuals, foundations, and private funds coming up throughout the rest of April. And I want to thank again everyone who joined, as well as the supporters, Chicago Community Trust and the MacArthur Foundation. So thanks so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time. We have a short survey. If you have a minute to give us feedback, we want to continue to improve. And otherwise, enjoy your day.